Well, hello there. This is Eric, and you're getting a surprise midweek episode. Why, you may ask? Well, I wanted to share a sneak peek of the kind of content that I write for my weekly Substack article. Each week, I dive into a different topic related to reading, or I cover a book that I've just read. So if you're enjoying the podcast but haven't subscribed or seen the Substack newsletter yet, you can do so at booksoftitans.com. This episode is a great example of the reading tips and insights that you'll find there. So this particular article that I'm releasing today is called Frameworks for Reading, with the subtitle of Some Tips for Remembering What You Read. Do you find yourself struggling to remember what you read? This has been a continual difficulty for me and is a main reason that I started this reading project. I wanted to read more books, but more importantly, I wanted to experiment with different ways to help me remember what I read. One of the most powerful ways that I've found to remember what I read is to apply basic summary frameworks during and after the completion of each book. In this article, I'll highlight some of the most powerful frameworks that you can write in the back of your book, in a journal, or in a notes app upon completing a book. The best part about these ideas is that they take a short time to complete, but can greatly enhance your reading memory and comprehension. So the first idea is the one sentence. Last week, I had breakfast with my friend DT Slouffman. He is a contender for the most interesting man alive, and one of his roles is teaching the art of storytelling at a college. In that course, he writes the following sentence on the board as a tool for students to apply to fiction. So it starts like this. There's a blank space, wants, blank, but, blank, so, blank. Again, blank, wants, so usually the protagonist wants something, but there's something in the way. So this is what the protagonist does to solve that issue, or the change that needs to occur for that person to get what they want. What I love about this simple sentence is that it requires you to identify the protagonist, his or her desire, the challenge, and then the path towards growth, resolution, or fulfillment. If we take the sentence backwards, it identifies the change required to overcome an obstacle by the main character. It's an encapsulation of the hero's journey, and it forces you to consolidate the book down to one sentence. If you can then remember that one sentence that you have crafted, chances are you'll be able to recall a large portion of the book. So here's a one-sentence example I made for The Great Gatsby, and yours may be completely different from mine, but I kept this one simple and short on purpose. So here it goes. Jay Gatsby wants Daisy, but she is married, so chaos and death ensue. I could elaborate on each part, and you might choose to do so. The lack of a joyful resolution immediately identifies the work as a tragedy. So that's kind of something cool about this sentence, is it just helps you know what kind of work it is. By highlighting death, I immediately think of those situations in the book. I can picture Daisy and Jay as I did while I was reading the book. For properly recalling a book, sometimes you just need a simple hook that calls up other memories. This one-sentence framework is that hook. The second idea of three ideas here is called the one thing. And this is a major focal point of my reading project, Books of Titans. And it's an attempt to remember just one thing from each book that I read. It may seem counterintuitive and may even sound wasteful, but I found that if I tried to remember a bunch of things from a book, I would usually forget all of them. But if I just tried to remember one thing, I could usually recall that, and in turn, it would help me remember other parts of the book. This idea is easier to impose upon works of nonfiction, but I'll provide ideas for fiction as well. Here are a few ways to remember a one thing in different types of books. So for self-help books, instead of trying to remember one thing, simply implement one thing immediately. If you're reading a book about personal finance, implement one idea from the book in relation to debt, budgets, or investments. If it's a book about fasting, begin to fast. Running, apply one of the tips on your next run. You will always remember that book if you implement one idea into your daily routine. For biographies and works of history, try to remember one story from the book. For example, in Walter Isaacson's biography of Einstein, there was a story about Einstein being invited to a women's prayer group in the USA during World War II. They prayed together in a circle, and when it came to Einstein, he stood up, took out his violin, and prayed through that instrument without saying a word. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall at that meeting. That story, when I recall that, it helps me remember why Einstein was in the USA at that point, what he was working on, and other aspects of his life. For works of fiction, I encourage you to write out the one thing you can't get out of your brain. Maybe it's a theme that you've seen across a variety of books. Perhaps the protagonist confronts a problem that you've had in your own life, and your one thing is how that person dealt with their situation. In general, you want to highlight the one thing that stood out to you the most about that book. If you can remember that, it will help you to remember other parts of the book as well. One kind of test I try is just to look at my bookshelves, look at a particular book, and see if I can recall that one thing. It's a good practice just every now and then, and just to kind of keep your memory going with these different books. All right, the third and final idea here is something called identifying stakes. This is another tool that my friend DT teaches his children and students. The idea here is that most books will present things of value or desire that are put at risk. That creates a stake, and then that stake must be paid by the end of the book. The exercise here is to create a 2-column list in the back of your book or in your journal or notes app and write the stake on the left and its resolution on the right. If a stake is introduced and not resolved, you have a subpar book or movie or TV show, etc. Here are a few stakes from The Great Gatsby. Jay Gatsby builds a mansion across the lake from Daisy in an effort to impress her with his wealth. That can't just remain neutral. Either it will have an impact or not. The stake must be paid in one way or another. Another one is that Jay tells Daisy's husband, Tom, that she never loved him. That creates a stake that must be paid in one way or another by Daisy's response. A third stake is that Daisy's husband's mistress is killed by Daisy and Gatsby in a car accident. That creates a stake that must be paid through the legal system or through personal revenge or some other manner. By highlighting these stakes and payments, you're generating your own framework for the book that are actively seeing each stake through to its conclusion. This will help you remember key occurrences in the book. This tool can be applied to nearly all fiction and many works of nonfiction, including biographies and histories. I'd be curious at the end here to hear if you have any tools like this that you apply to the art of reading that help you remember what you read. If you do, I would encourage you to leave your comments on Substack. So just go to booksoftitans.com and look for this recent article. And then at the bottom, you can comment. In that way, other people can see and learn from you in the things that you've applied to your reading life. Thank you for listening.